The Labour Party has a problem. By suspending Corbyn from the whip and constantly demonising him in public, they have contributed to trashing his reputation. But people's memories aren't as short as they might hope. So they'll keep being asked why, just 2 years ago, they backed this guy to be Prime Minister. That question is most pointed for people who were in his shadow cabinet, like former Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth.
2.5 years ago, you campaigned to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister. Would you now like to apologise to the British people for that?
Well, I remember 2.5 years ago being caught out, expressing my opinions on what I thought would happen in that general election. Look, he was elected leader of the Labour Party. I was offered a post to defend our National Health Service and campaign on the National Health Service. I still think was important to campaign on the National Health Service, but the British people made their judgment in the end.
Against your advice. I mean, you wanted a man to be Prime Minister who your party has now decided isn't even fit to hold the Labour whip.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that require, if not an apology, which can be overdone apologies in our political culture, it surely requires at least an explanation and some contrition?
Well, he was never going to be Prime Minister. The British public expressed their opinion on whether he would be Prime Minister.
You told us that at the time.
Well, I did actually. That was the problem.
In private.
I remember being in many newspapers.
You would come on to shows like this and argue for a Corbyn premiership.
I argued for a Labour government to invest in the National Health Service.
Jeremy Corbyn was your leader. I mean, the reason, look, it's historic. I understand that, but it is some resonance because it is to do with trust. You know, Boris Johnson clearly has huge trust problems. Yeah. But if you campaign for Jeremy Corbyn and it's clear you didn't really mean it, that's a trust issue. And I would ask you just to look at this. If Mr. Corbyn had become Prime Minister, which you campaigned for, you really think that Britain would have rallied the West against Russia in Ukraine, been in the vanguard of arming Ukraine, would have encouraged Sweden and Finland to join NATO? Do you think any of that would have been done by Britain under Mr. Corbyn?
But Jeremy Corbyn wasn't going to be Prime Minister. The polls showed that consistently. And I wanted to help Labour MPs get across the line and not lose their seats. And sadly, many of them lost their seats in that general election. We went down to our worst defeat since the 1930s. Many good people lost their seats who didn't deserve to lose their seats in that general election.
Jonathan Ashworth there was referring to a leaked tape published by right-wing website Guido Fawkes in 2019. Ashworth had told a Tory candidate that Labour wouldn't win that election, so he needn't worry what Corbyn would be like as Prime Minister. This is what Ashworth said at the time after that tape was leaked.
If you leak it to Guido Fawkes, of course it makes me look like a right plonker. But it's not what I mean when I'm winding up a friend, trying to sort of, pull his leg a bit, as it were.
So hang on, let's be clear. When you said the party effed it up when they failed to get rid of Corbyn, you didn't mean that either?
No, I'm pulling his leg because he's saying stuff to me, saying, why don't you get rid of him? And
do you think Jeremy Corbyn is a threat to national security?
No, of course I don't. Of course I don't. And he makes this ridiculous comment to me.
I mean, I can't tell what you mean and don't mean anymore.
Well, I'm joshing around with somebody who I thought was an old friend who's now leaked it to Guido Fawkes, an old friend who I, as I say, I've known for many years. He's a Tory and we've always had a bit of banter together. I never expect him to, but I'm winding him up, I'm teasing him. He's been winding me up, saying, oh, everyone at CCHQ thinks it's going to be really close, Corbyn's going to win, and all this sort of stuff. And we're joshing around with each other. But he's obviously is in a panic because he thinks the Labour Party is going to win, which is why he's leaked our jokey conversation.
What a pathetic, dishonest man he is. Ash, your comments on Jonathan Ashworth?
Do you look at Jonathan Ashworth and you go, well, there's a stellar communicator. There's a real political talent. There is somebody with absolutely ruthless clarity, strategic genius. No, you don't say any of those things. But even if you're not especially talented, the one thing that you can be is honest. All right? That's easy. That's something everyone can do. You know the difference between the truth and a lie. And he can't even do that. Hearing him talk to Andrew Neil, to be honest, I don't think either one of them come out particularly well. Because I think if you're in this moment, 2022, there's a cost of living crisis that's only going to get worse. And you're talking about, Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. I don't think that you're either a serious political journalist, and you're also not a serious politician if this is what you're choosing to focus on. But leaving that aside for a second, this expectation that you should have to apologize for wanting Jeremy Corbyn to become prime minister, or in Jonathan Ashworth's case, not wanting him to become prime minister, but campaigning as part of the same party in a general election. That's part of how the media stacks the deck against the left, because you're not allowed to say, no, actually, like that was a really horrible election result. Yes, there's lots to learn from, but I stand by the things that we said we thought were good for the country. We stand by that manifesto because I stood in that manifesto. I stand by that leader who sure couldn't get the job done. He couldn't do it. But, you know, he was a man who was honest and he had integrity and he genuinely wanted the best for people. That is something that Jonathan Ashworth could say. But he melted in the face of, you know, that bit of media pressure, which, yeah, it's evidence of a biased media environment. But a man with backbone would be able to stand up to it. Clearly, Jonathan Ashworth is not that man.
And it's not just that interview, is it? That the whole strategy of the Labour Party, which I think is a flawed one, is to not in any way defend Jeremy Corbyn as, you know, someone who would have been a decent prime minister, who led their party just 2.5 years ago and who they tried to make prime minister, say, yes, we disagreed, but he would have been far better than Boris Johnson, et cetera, et cetera. They have done more really than the media over the past 2.5 years to demonise that man. So they've said he's too racist to be in the Labour Party. He's hates British national security too much that we can't let him back in. He is a catastrophe of a human being. This is what we've been hearing from Labour politicians. And I mean, I know you're saying Andrew Neil should focus on different things, but we are in a moment where, you know, honesty does matter in politics. If you're a journalist, you can say, look, the Labour Party are the ones talking about honesty all the time when it comes to Boris Johnson. And there is a clear contradiction in what they have been telling us, which is they've been saying this guy is too racist, too disgusting to be in your party. But 2.5 years ago, you were actively telling people to vote for him. I've got a story actually about Jonathan Ashworth and this situation, because after that leak happened in Guido Fawkes, I got a call from Jonathan Ashworth, and it was quite strange. You know, he called me on my mobile because I don't think we'd ever really had a conversation before, maybe like bumped into each other once at Labour Party conference. And he was saying, oh, you know, I'm so humiliated. I'm so sorry. I feel so terrible about this, blah, blah, you know, really going for it. And I was a bit like, okay, you know, whatever. I was very unimpressed, but whatever. And I think the only explanation I can have of why he did that is he thought that maybe he was going to go for leader or deputy leader, and he thought that Novara Media might have some sort of sway over that result. And so he was like, oh, my cover has been blown. He's just so clearly a careerist, like that doesn't really care about what he's talking about, but he was happy to tell the public one thing in 2019, tell the public a completely different thing in 2022. And everyone is left none the wiser what he actually believes, other than that he wants to advance his own career.
But you're making a really good point about honesty here. In some ways, it's a mirror image of what's going on in the Conservative Party, because Boris Johnson is a pathological liar, all right? He wouldn't know the truth if he woke up in bed with it. And that's something which then filters down through his ministers and the rest of his party. They lie as much as they feel they can get away with. And that is something which you see time and time again. You know, that's the kind of thing which, you know, sends the Liberal centre going completely spare. You know, you've got your Peter Stefanovic videos, you've got your, you know, James O'Brien. That's the sort of bread and butter of Liberal opposition to the Conservative Party. But if you want to look at Keir Starmer, he's somebody who was elected on a particular policy platform. And it wasn't something which was just tacitly understood. It was something which he wrote down, and he even called them pledges, right? A pledge is a promise. A pledge is a vow. And he said, this is what I'm going to go for. He presented an image of himself as, you know, a campaigning human rights lawyer, someone who's on the side of civil liberties, the rights of protesters, someone who stands with trade unions. You know, he's standing up in the hustings saying, you know, I'm not going to give an interview to The Sun. And then all of those things within the first year of his leadership are booted into Rosie. And when he's confronted on it, goes, well, sure, I'll say anything to get elected. I'll break any promise. So you've got this kind of trickle down dishonesty, where if that's the tone which is set by the leader, which is you say whatever you want to a particular audience just to sort of get through that one, you know, whether it's a media interaction or whether it's a conversation with a politician or whether it's, you know, a conversation with a key stakeholder, you say whatever's necessary and then you just move on to the next thing. Well, if your leader's doing that, why wouldn't you have someone like Jonathan Ashworth doing the exact same thing? It's trickle down dishonesty. You know, wealth doesn't trickle down, but bad habits do.
Tysky Sour is free for all to access. We're not behind a paywall. We don't have ad partnerships. And we will never answer to the super rich. We provide independent analysis, thorough reporting on the issues drastically impacting our lives. And we do all this thanks to our regular supporters. Join them from just £1 per month and donate anything you can at novaramedia.com/support. We couldn't make the show without you.